الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم معلم إبراهيم علمنا ومفهم سليمان فهمنا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. So today inshallah ta'ala we're going to be doing a quick study of this small treatise which is referred to as Aqeedah Imam al-Bukhari, the Creed of Imam al-Bukhari. So inshallah this session will have two sections. We're going to begin with the introduction, which is the biography of the author Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'a, and then inshallah we're going to go into the Matn. Like, why is this Matn important first? This Matn is important, and its importance is shown in three ways, or from three angles. The first is عظم شأن المؤلف ومكانته العلية في نفوس المسلمين. The first is the station of the author, the great station of the author, and his high position in the hearts of the believers and the Muslims all over the world, east and west, from the time that he died up until today. Imam al-Bukhari. Everybody heard of him? I believe someone hasn't heard of him. Adam, have you heard of Bukhari? Okay, yeah, young lovers. So generally speaking, Imam al-Bukhari is so well known. Every day in the khutbah, in Mecca, in Medina, anywhere you go, any lecture you hear, you might always hear it was reported by Imam al-Bukhari. Who is Bukhari? And why does it have this high station in the hearts of the believers and the Muslims? I'm going to read his biography in a minute. Number two, the second angle, هذا المختصر أشبه بحكاية الإجماع في معتقد السلف. This treatise is very small and it is very resemblant to reporting a consensus of the Salaf in the affair of the Aqeedah. And that will become clear once we start the Risala. It's as if this treatise, he's saying to you, look, this is a consensus. I've been to all these lands, I've been to all these scholars. I'm going to talk about that in more detail when we start. And all of them were in agreement. They never differed on these issues of Aqeedah. So that's a great fa'idah that you get from this Risala. أشبه بحكاية الإجماع لأئمة السلف في المعتقد. It's as if it's a consensus. And the affair of consensus, what does consensus mean? Ijma'. There are some affairs in the religion, like in the affairs of fiqh, praying, there might be tolerance for a difference of opinion. You pray after Sami Allahu liman hamida, do you place your hands on your chest or do you place your hands on the side? After you come up from bowing. There's a difference of opinion. Some scholars say this, some scholars say this, and they both use the same evidence. So there's a tolerance for difference of opinion. And in some affairs of fiqh, there's ijma'. So there's differing, and there's the opposite, which is ijma'. Ijma' is consensus, meaning there's no differing at all. For example, that the salah, before you pray, that there is adhan, that we do the caller to prayer before the prayer. Is there any difference of opinion that that's what you're supposed to do? La. And the wordings that you use, there's any difference of opinion? La. It's ijma'. It's something that there's no difference of opinion on. Ramadan, that you begin fasting from Fajr, from dawn, till Maghrib, till sunset. Is there any difference of opinion in that? No, there's ijma'. That's what ijma' means. Some of the scholars, they wrote books specific on the affairs where there is ijma'. Like al-Mundhiri, he's got a book called al-Ijma', and other than him from the scholars, which they give importance. They gave some importance to. So here, it's not fiqh, it's something even more important than fiqh. Is the Aqeedah, the creed of a Muslim and a believer. And so Imam Bukhari's treatise here, it resembles, it looks very similar to the mentioning of ijma', consensus of the Salaf, the righteous three generations, in these affairs of creed that he's going to mention inshallah. From the third angle, he says, the third angle is هذا المتن مع وجازته واختصاره حوى أمهات مهمات الاعتقاد. Even though this treatise is very small, it's very short, is in Arabic you could write it down in 2 pages. It's not very big. But the affairs that he mentioned are from the the utmost level of importance in the affair of Aqeedah. He mentions 9 affairs, 9 masail, 9 topics if you like. He mentions 9 topics in the Aqeedah, and these 9 are very important parts of the Aqeedah. They're not the only ones, but they are some of the usul, some of the foundations of the Aqeedah. And so his tariqah is he will mention the point and he will mention the evidence straight after. He will mention the point and he will mention the evidence straight after. And usually he will just mention one evidence because it's mukhtasar, it's summarized. Now we go into the second part of today's session, which is the Matn, the actual text. And our brother inshallah will read. Tfaddal. The beginning, just the isnad. Read the isnad right now. عندك؟ هات المظلل.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم صل لأستاذنا ومشايخ وجميع المسلمين. قال أخبرنا أحمد بن محمد بن حفص الهروي قال حدثنا محمد بن أحمد بن محمد بن سلمة قال حدثنا أبو الحسين محمد بن عمران بن موسى الجرجاني قال سمعت أبا محمد عبد الرحمن بن محمد بن عبد الرحمن البخاري بالشاشة يقول سمعت أبا عبد الله محمد بن إسماعيل البخاري يقول لقيت أكثر من 1000 رجل من أهل العلم أهل الحجاز ومكة والمدينة والكوفة والبصرة والواسط وبغداد والشام ومصر.
أحسن الله عليك جزاك الله خير. So it begins, first of all, this treatise, small treatise is found in a book called Sharh Usul I'tiqad Ahli Sunnah, Sharh Usul I'tiqad Ahli Sunnah by Imam al-Lalaka'i. Al-Lalaka'i has this book called Sharh Usul I'tiqad Ahli Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And in there he mentions his chain of narration. He mentions his chain and he says it's been narrated to me by Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hafs al-Harawi all the way back to Imam al-Bukhari. This here is a glimpse of how the Salaf were with regards to having chains of narration for everything that they had, whether it was ahadith, whether it was books in fiqh, books in hadith, even books in lugha at that time, they would have chains of narration going back to it. And this chain of narration, Hafiz ibn Hajar in Fath al-Bari, and likewise Murtada al-Zabidi fi Ithaf al-Sadat al-Muttaqeen, both of them said that this chain of narration is isnadun sahih, is an authentic chain. Then he said, as our brother read, لقيت أكثر من 1000 رجل من أهل العلم. He says, I met more than 1,000 scholars, or more than 1,000 men from the people of knowledge in the land of Hijaz. Hijaz is Mecca, Medina and Jeddah. That area is called Hijaz. In the land of Hijaz, Mecca and Medina. Wal-Kufa wal-Basra, 2 cities in Iraq. Wawasid also and Baghdad, all of them in Iraq. So I went to Hijaz, Mecca, Medina, Kufa, Basra, Wasid, Baghdad, Sham. Sham is Syria, that area, Greater Syria if you like. Wa Masr and Egypt. 4 different directions, and in each one there were different cities that he traveled to. لقيتهم كرات قرنا بعد قرن ثم قرنا بعد قرن أدركتهم وهم متوافرون منذ أكثر من 46 سنة. He says, I met more than 1,000 scholars in all of these different lands, generation after generation. Meaning I went to the land and there was a generation of scholars living in that land, and that generation died out. I sought knowledge from that generation and that generation died out. Another generation came that were after them, that were still scholars, but they were not in the same level as that level that passed out. He sought knowledge from them as well, and he met them as well in all of these different lands. Karratin wa marrat, many times over, not just once, many times over. He said, I met all of them in a time span that increases upon 46 years. So this time that he's saying he went to all these lands, time after time, generation after generation, 1,000 scholars, is over a time period of 46 years. Okay. هذه الجملة في مقدمة معتقده يظهر فيها أهمية الخلاصة التي يذكرها رحمه الله تعالى في المعتقد. Him mentioning this to us in the beginning, in the introduction to his treatise, shows you how important this small treatise is. It is زبدة تحصيله في التلقي عن أئمة العلماء من أهل العلم وكثرة الشيوخ في مختلف البلاد الذي أخذ عنهم. It is his what do you call khulasa? It's a summary of his 46 years where he's been traveling for knowledge. He's giving the khulasa. 46 years, I met more than 1,000 scholars in all of these different lands, and this is the summary I'm going to give you in the creed of all of those scholars that I met. In the creed of all those scholars that I met. And Allah Azza wa Jal blessed him to travel for knowledge from a young age. In the biography, we said that he went Hajj in which year? How old was he when he went Hajj? 18. Ahsant. طيب, we're going to do some maths now. So he's 18 years old when he performed Hajj. And before 18, he actually traveled for some knowledge as well. And he says here that he was طيب دقيقة. We mentioned that already. طيب. So he was 18 years old when he went to Hajj. And here he says the time span that he was traveling to all these lands and all these people that he met was how many years? 46. Okay, let's start with 46. It starts with 46. And what year was he born? He was born 194 after the Hijrah. Okay, 46. 194. Okay. Another number. What year did he die? Did we mention it? Ahsant. He died in the year 256. Alright. And how old was he when he died? 62. So if you take 62, which was his lifespan, how long he lived, minus it by how long he traveled, how many years did he travel? 46. 46 take away 62. Ahsant. 16. Alright. So he was 16 years old when he first started traveling. He was 18 when he went Hajj, but he traveled before that. The first time he traveled was when he was 16 years old. And it mentions in other masadir, we never mentioned it here, in Tariq al-Baghdad and other than it, that the year when he was 16, the year that he started traveling for knowledge was the year 210. The year 210. So 210 take away from 194 is 16. So it shows you 100% he sought knowledge when he first started traveling for knowledge when he was 16. طيب. What do we benefit from these little calculations that we were doing? What do we benefit from the fact that he says, for more than 46 years I was traveling for knowledge, and he started at the age of 16? What other benefit can you get from these numbers? What we benefit from it? Who knows?
This is lifetime, basically.
Lifetime. What else? So when was this book written?
At the end of it, yeah.
You can't write it if he's dead. Compiled it, but when did he do it? You're close. Near his death. At the end of his life, he must have written this treatise. Because he started at 16, the year 210. He was born 194, he was 16 years old. He started 16 and he said he sought knowledge, he traveled for 46 years. He's telling us now 46 years. And if we add 16 with 46, that's 62. That means 62 he died. So he must have written this just before his death. Just before his death. So it's not just a summary of his travels, it's a summary of his life. And that's why we have in one version of this treatise, it mentions that one of the students, he said, سمعته قبل موته بشهر. I heard this treatise, this book from Imam al-Bukhari before he passed away by 1 month. So one of the students in one narration of this book mentions that he heard this book 1 month before he passed away. And if that is the case, then it also benefits us that this is kind of like a wasiyah. It's kind of like a final advice and a final counsel that he's giving the people before he passes away. From the benefit that he gathered, that Allah Azza wa Jal bestowed upon him from traveling to all these different cities and countries and meeting more than 1,000 scholars. Then he starts mentioning those names. طيب اقرأ بسرعة إذا قدرت. عندك؟ طيب.
قال رحمه الله: ولا أحصي كم دخلت الكوفة والبغداد مع محدث أهل خراسان ومنهم المكي بن إبراهيم.
ما عندك قبل هذا؟ تفضل. من مظلل يحتاه.
أهل الشام ومصر والجزيرة مرتين والبصرة 4 مرات في سنين ذوي بالحجاز 6 أعوام. ولا أحصي كم دخلت الكوفة وبغداد مع محدث أهل خراسان منهم المكي بن إبراهيم ويحيى بن يحيى وعلي بن الحسن بن شقيق وقتيبة بن سعيد.
He starts mentioning names. So he said, I went to Iraq this many times, I went to this place this many times. Then he starts mentioning some of the names that he met. And these are some of the names. And some of them are the greatest scholars of that time. Continue.
وشهاب بن معمر وبالشام محمد بن يوسف بن الفريابي وأبي مصهر بن عبد الأعلى بن مصهر وأبي المغيرة عبد القدوس بن الحجاج وأبي اليمان الحكم بن نافع ومن بعدهم عدة كثيرة. وبمصر يحيى بن كثير وأبا صالح كاتب الليث بن سعد وسعيد بن أبي مريم وأصبغ بن الفرج ونعيم بن حماد. وبمكة عبد الله بن يزيد المقري والحميدي وسليمان بن حرب قاضي مكة وأحمد بن محمد الأزرقي. وبالمدينة إسماعيل بن أبي أويس ومطرف بن عبد الله وعبد الله بن نافع الزبيري وأحمد بن أبي بكر أبي مصعب الزهري وإبراهيم بن حمزة الزبيري وإبراهيم بن المنذر الحزامي. وبالبصرة أبي عاصم الضحاك بن مخلد الشيباني وأبي الوليد هشام بن عبد الملك والحجاج بن المنهال نعم وعلي بن عبد الله بن جعفر المديني. وبالكوفة أبي نعيم الفضيل بن دكين وعبيد الله بن موسى وأحمد بن يونس وقبيصة بن عقبة وابن نمير وعبد الله بن عثمان بن أبي شيبة. وببغداد أحمد بن حنبل ويحيى بن معين وأبي معمر وأبي خيثمة وأبي عبيد القاسم بن سلام. ومن أهل الجزيرة عمرو بن خالد الحراني.
I'll finish off here. وبواسط عمرو بن عون وعاصم بن علي بن عاصم وبمر صدقة بن الفضل وإسحاق بن إبراهيم الحنظلي. واكتفينا بتسمية هؤلاء كي يكون مختصرا وألا يطول ذلك. So here he mentions 45 scholars and teachers that he met in all of these different lands. 45 scholars, and some of these scholars that he mentioned are akabir al-ulama, the greatest of the scholars that lived in those times. He mentions from amongst them Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He mentions Yahya ibn Ma'in, the colleague of Imam Ahmad. He mentions Ahmad ibn Yunus. Ahmad ibn Yunus, Imam Ahmad called Ahmad ibn Yunus Shaykh al-Islam in that time. You have in here the Katib of Layth ibn Sa'ad. We have Abu Nu'aym Fadl ibn Dukayn, from the greatest scholars that were alive at that time. And other than them, Ibn Abi Shaybah, and other than them from the ulama, the great ulama. He doesn't mention all of his teachers because here it's just a summary, it's a mukhtasar. He can't mention 1,000 names here. So he just mentions 45 of them. Now, then he says, what is the benefit of him mentioning all these names and these lands? He says, فَمَا رَأَيْتُ وَاحِدًا مِّنْهُمْ يَخْتَلِفُ فِي هَذِهِ الْأَشْيَاءِ. I never found one of them differing in the following affairs that he's going to mention from Aqeedah. He never found one of them differing in those affairs. So that's why we said it's similar to him reporting an ijma', consensus. He's met 1,000 scholars in all these different lands, in a lifespan of traveling of 46 years. He never met a teacher and a scholar from these great scholars of Islam that everyone refers back to in hadith, in fiqh, and in other than that from the sciences. All of them had this aqeedah and they never differed in it. طيب تفضل.
أحسن الله إليك. أن الدين قول وفعل وذلك لقول الله وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء ويقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة وذلك دين القيمة.
Ahsant. So now he's going to mention the 9 points. After that introduction, he's going to mention 9 points in Aqeedah. And these 9 points are not all of the important usul foundations in Aqeedah. It's just some of them. Where here, it's ishara. He's going to mention 9. And you studying these 9 is an ishara. It's a indication that you go and read the books of Aqeedah in more detail. This is a summary, and you studying the summary. It's not enough for you just to study the summary. It's an indication for you that you go and study these affairs 9 in more detail in the books of Aqeedah, and the other affairs that I never had time to mention, because this is a summary. Is that clear? Number 1, أن الدين قول وعمل, that the religion is made up of speech and action. And a deen here is referring to Iman. The deen here is referring to Iman. So a person's Iman, the definition of Iman is qawlun wa amal. It is speech and it is action. And in more detail, the qawl, the speech, it encompasses 2 things. إذا أطلق, if it's mentioned unrestrictedly, the speech, the qawl, encompasses 2 things. قول القلب, the statement of the heart. عقيدة, by way of belief and holding as creed. قل آمنت بالله, say I believe in Allah. So the qawl here it refers also to the heart. So قول القلب عقيدة وقول اللسان, and the statement of the tongue لفظا أو عفوا نطقا وتلفظا, that a person utters with their tongue أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله and the likes. And so qawl is, if it's mentioned unrestrictedly, it encompasses what? 2 things. What are they? Adam. No. So now we said the religion, Iman, is speech and action. Speech itself encompasses 2 things. If you mention it, it's the speech of the heart and the speech of the tongue. واضح. Then we go to action now. Amal. What does amal include? Amal includes all 3. It includes the action of the heart, like love, hope, fear, khashya, inaba, tawakkul, trust in Allah. All of that is haya, shyness. All of that's the actions of the heart. So number 1, action of the heart. Number 2, action of the limbs, that you do sujood, that you do hajj, that you do umrah. These are actions that you do with your limbs. And the actions of the tongue, like reciting the Quran, like remembering Allah, like giving da'wah, like commanding the good and forbidding the evil. طيب, is that clear? Iman is speech and action. And that's a refutation against the people that say Iman is only action of the heart. And maybe they'll say La ilaha illallah, speech of the tongue. That's it. But they negate the actions of the heart. They negate the action of the limbs. They negate the actions of the tongue, the other actions like reciting Quran and the likes. So they say, Iman is only in our heart. Brother, my Iman is in my heart, don't worry, I don't need to pray. How many times do we hear that? Brother, don't worry, he's doing drugs and he's doing this and don't worry man, Iman's complete. It's mia, it's 100% in my heart. If Iman was 100% in the heart, it would show in the actions of the limbs, the actions of the tongues, the actions of the kadha. Is that clear? So Iman includes all of these things, and it's not just the heart alone. Okay, and other ulama, they also increase. This is just a summary, but other ulama mention more detailed definitions, but they always mention that Iman increases and decreases. If Iman and the deen is statement, speech and statement, and we've mentioned that in detail, when you do something in your speech or your statement that is righteousness, that's something that is going to bring you closer to Allah, what does it do? It increases your Iman. The more you recite Quran. When Ramadan comes, what happens? Everyone's Iman goes up a little bit. Why? Because you're fasting, righteous deed. You're reciting Quran, you're praying in the night, you're doing righteous deeds, so your Iman goes up. And when a person sins, listens to music, does this, does that, Iman goes down. And that's a testament to the fact that Iman increases and decreases in accordance to these things. And there's a refutation, as we said, against those people that say, Iman, it doesn't move, it stays still. My Iman, your Iman, it's the same Iman as Jibreel alayhi salam, and the Iman of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We all mu'min, we all have same Iman. There's no, he's higher, he's a bit lower, his Iman's higher. No, all of us the same. And that's batil, that's falsehood. Iman increases and decreases. And there's virtues between the prophets, the ulul azm, the 5 main messengers. They're better than the other messengers. And Abu Bakr and Umar are better than the rest of the Sahaba. And that goes back to Iman. Is that clear? And virtue. Then he mentions the evidence. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهِ. They were not commanded except to worship Allah, مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ, making their religion sincere to Him, حُنَفَاءَ وَيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. And that they establish the prayer and they give the zakah, and that is the upright religion. Many of the scholars, Imam Bukhari only mentioned this evidence, and many of the scholars, they only mention this evidence as a proof. Imam Humaydi mentioned this evidence. Khalal has a narration that mentions this as evidence. Imam Shafi'i, and other than them. Why? Because this is one of the strongest evidences that you can use against those people that claim Iman doesn't go up and down and is only in your heart and the likes. Why? Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions that they were not commanded except to worship Allah mukhlisina, sincerely. Sincerely, where does it occur? The heart, right? لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ وَيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ. And they establish the prayer. That's what? Action on your limbs. وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, also from your limbs. And in the salah you have to speak with your mouth. So action of the tongue as well. And you have to recite Quran. And after all of that, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. That is the upright religion. So the religion is established upon speech and action. The religion is established upon speech and action. And the first thing Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions in the verse is the Tawheed. That they were not commanded except to worship Allah alone. And that shows you Tawheed, that Iman has many actions and many statements included in it. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that there are 70 odd branches of Iman. The highest of it is what? La ilaha illallah. That you say La ilaha illallah. To worship Allah. So Tawheed is al-aslul asil, is the first foundation, is the highest thing, is the most important thing of the religion and Iman. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jalla began with it. طيب. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only mention establishing the prayer and giving zakah? The ulama, they mention the reason why Allah Azza wa Jalla sufficed with the mention of establishing the prayer and giving zakah is because the person who fulfills that, the person who prays his 5 daily prayers and gives the obligatory zakah that's upon him, then this necessitates from him doing that necessitates from him and has an effect upon him to carry out the rest of the obligation and the rest of the things that he has to fulfill. Is that clear? And someone that is yadhi' as-salah, he doesn't pray his 5 daily prayers, or he prays some and he delays it and the likes, he doesn't give his obligatory zakah, then the rest of the other actions, the other obligations, he's more likely that he's going to waste it and not fulfill it as well. Is that clear? So Allah sufficed with this because لِقُوَّةِ تَأْثِيرِهِ, how strong the effect of these two when you fulfill it will have on the rest of bringing the rest of the righteous deeds and the obligations that are upon you. Imam al-Shafi'i, he said once, Laylatan lil-Humaydi, he said one night to Imam al-Humaydi, which is another Imam, and he's got his own book called Usul al-Sunnah. Imam al-Shafi'i said to him, ما يحتج عليهم, يعني على أهل الإرجاء, the Murji'ah, ما يحتج عليهم بآية أحج من قوله عز وجل وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء ويقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة وذلك دين القيمة. Imam al-Shafi'i said to Imam al-Humaydi that there is no proof that you can use as a verse, as an ayah, as a textual proof against the Murji'ah, the people that deny Iman is in your actions and the likes. There's no proof bigger that you can use against them than this verse, than the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal that we just read in Surah Al-Bayyinah. And that's why Imam Bukhari, him choosing this as the only evidence that he mentions in this summary, shows you his level of fiqh. He could have mentioned 10 different verses, 10 different evidences, But he just mentioned this one. Why? Because how strong of an evidence it is against those people of irja'. And this is what the ulama kabiran and kabir have used as evidence, sometimes alongside with other evidences, and sometimes when they summarize they only mention that. طيب. Then we go to the next point. تفضل أخي.
صلى الله عليه قال رحمه الله وأن القرآن كلام الله غير مخلوق بقوله إن ربكم الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش يغشي الليل النهار يطلبه حثيثا والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمره. قال أبو عبد الله محمد بن إسماعيل قال ابن عيينة فبين الله الخلق من الأمر بقوله ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين.
جزاك الله خير. The second issue from the 9 topic that he mentions is that the Quran is the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal. It is not created. The Quran is the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal. It is not created. Just like Allah Azza wa Jal says, he mentions the verse. Indeed, your Lord is the one who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. Then he rose above the throne. يغشي الليل النهار يطلبه حثيثا والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمره. And the shahid is at the end of the verse ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين. He uses this as evidence. How is it an evidence? At the end of the verse, Allah Azza wa Jal, he says ألا له الخلق والأمر. Indeed, to Allah belongs the command and the creation, or the creation and the command. Tabarakallahu Rabbul Alameen. Some things Allah Azza wa Jal, He created, like the heavens and the earth and the stars and the moon, that's mentioned in this verse. And some things are not created, but they come from His command, whether it's His speech, like kun fayakun, be and it is. So the word be, is it created? La, kun, it's not created, the words are not created. But by way of it, Allah Azza wa Jal commands, and by way of that command, something occurs. So Allah Azza wa Jal differentiated between something that is makhlooq, something that's created, and something that is a command. And so is the Quran from amongst the commandments, or is it from the amr? What explains it is another verse in the Quran. In Surah Ash-Shura, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَكَذَلِكَ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ رُوحًا مِّنْ أَمْرِنَا مَا كُنْتَ تَدْرِي مَا الْكِتَابُ وَلَا الْإِيمَانُ الآية. Here Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, we have likewise أوحينا إليك, sent down revelation to you, روحا من أمرنا, روحا from our command. Ruh, if you go to the tafsir of the scholars, they mention revelation from our command. And straight after, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, ما كنت تدري, oh you Muhammad, you did not know, ما كنت تدري ما الكتاب, you did not know what was in the what the book was, ولا الإيمان, know what iman was, up until Allah Azza wa Jal revealed it to you. So here, روحا من أمرنا, a revelation from our command, shows you that the Quran is from amongst the commandments and is not from the creation. So the Quran of the speech of Allah, the Quran is not created, it is the speech of Him. And this is mentioned clearly in other places as well in the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. And Allah Azza wa Jalla spoke to Musa with speech. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, وَإِنْ أَحَدٌ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ اسْتَجَارَكَ فَأَجِرْهُ حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ. And if any of the polytheists seek refuge with you and the likes, then give him refuge. حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ, up until he hears the speech of Allah. So the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal is not created, and it's the Quran is speech of Allah, and the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal is not created. And there's other places Allah Azza wa Jal mentions many verses in this. We're not going to mention all of them. فَمِنْهُ بَدَأَ وَإِلَيْهِ يَعُودُ. From Him it began, and to Him it will return. The Quran of Allah Azza wa Jal is not created. And here Imam Bukhari narrates from his teacher Ibn Uyaynah that he said, Allah Azza wa Jal, after reading that verse, فَبَيَّنَ اللَّهُ الْخَلْقَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ. Allah Azza wa Jal, He distinguished between the commandments and the creation. Okay? Is that clear? Any questions? That's the second point. The Quran is the speech of Allah, it's not created. And on this point, a big group, a big sect deviated from Islam and the Sunnah, called the Jahmiyyah. The Jahmiyyah, if you go back to the story of Imam Ahmad in his biography, you will see that he was trialed with a big tribulation, which was called Mihnatul Quran. That some people of innovation spread their doubts to the ruler, and the ruler began to force with the sword everyone to believe that the Quran is created. And saying that the Quran is created is kufr. Imam Ahmad did not declare the ruler to be a kafir because he had a shubha, he had a doubt, he was not a person of knowledge. It was these innovators that were giving him these doubts, that were forcing him to take it. So Imam Ahmad was jailed and was beaten, and he went through a big tribulation. And you go back to his biography, you will see that. And this was being spread. And if you don't say that the Quran is created, you're going to be killed, or you're going to be imprisoned. And this has to be taught in the makatib, in the Quran schools, in the madaris for kids. It has to be a curriculum. This happened. The Jahmiyyah. And the Mu'tazila at that time as well, that were with it, behind it. طيب? So that's a refutation against them. طيب, so that was number 2. Point number 3. تفضل.
وأن الخير والشر بقدر لقوله قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ولقوله والله خلقكم وما تعملون ولقوله إن كل شيء خلقناه بقدر.
أحسنت. So point number 3, the third topic is that وأن الخير والشر بقدر, that all good and evil is by way of pre-decree, by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning everything that takes place, nothing takes place in the universe except that it's written down in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the qadr has 4 levels, 4 categories. The first of it is knowledge. First of all is knowledge, that Allah Azza wa Jal has knowledge of everything that's going to take place before it took place, and if it didn't take place, how it would have took place if it took place. That Allah Azza wa Jal is the all-knowing. So Allah Azza wa Jal had knowledge. Number 2, al-kitaba, the penning down of the qadr. The qadr is written down in the lawh al-mahfuz, in the what do you call it? Preserved tablet. Written down in the preserved tablet. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, He commanded, before He created the creation, He created the pen, and He commanded the pen to write. So the pen said, oh Allah, what should I write? Allah Azza wa Jal told the pen to write everything that's going to take place until the Day of Judgment. So everything that's taking place from the time of Adam until the Sa'ah is written down in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet. Number 3. طبعا the writing down, there's, in the second category of writing down, there's different categories as well. So there's the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the main preserved tablet. Then there are other places where things are written down, the qadr is written down, like the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud al-Sadiq al-Masduq, hadith number 4 in Arba'in al-Nawawi, that the Prophet ﷺ said, he told the stages of the embryo, human embryo, how it's born and the likes, 40 days, 40 days, 40 days. And then the angel is commanded, when he's commanded to blow a soul into the womb, he's commanded to write down 4 things. So this is type of the qadr as well, that's written down. But it's taken from where? It's taken from the preserved tablet. He writes down 4 things that you all know. Likewise, the qadr on Laylatul Qadr that's revealed. The angels, they're given the decree of everything that's going to happen in that year. On Laylatul Qadr, everything that's going to happen on that year, the angels are given the qadr that's going to take place. And that's taken again from where? The Lawh al-Mahfuz. So sometimes some people, they say, there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, if you make dua and the likes, it can change the qadr. How can the qadr change if the preserved tablet is written down, everything's written down? The preserved tablet, the Lawh al-Mahfuz, never changes. The pen has dried, the ink has dried, and the pages have been, it's done. There's nothing else going to be written in the preserved tablet. But the other writings, when they write the 4 things when you're being born, and Laylatul Qadr, and any other types of writing that I mentioned in the Sunnah, those ones in the hands of the angels can change. So let's say the qadr that the angels given is that you're going to die 62 years. Then he did dua, or he did silat al-rahim, he gave charity, and he upheld the ties of kinship. The Prophet said, whoever wants to live for a long life, then let him uphold the ties of kinship. So he did the upholding the ties of kinship. So that which is with the angel will be changed. 62, maybe 64, مثلا. But in Lawh al-Mahfuz, everything's written. That it was supposed to be 62, then he did dua, then it became 64, then kada, ila akhiri. Everything that's going to take place, the actions that could change, everything is in the Lawh al-Mahfuz. What changes? That which is in the hands of the angels. Is that clear? Number 3 is al-Mashi'ah. The Allah Azza wa Jal give permission for it to take place. And again, al-Mashi'ah is of 2 types. The permission of Allah is 2 types. There's Mashi'atullahi al-Kawni, the universal will of Allah. And then there's Mashi'atullah al-Shar'i, the will of Allah al-Shar'i, the legislative will of Allah. What's the difference between the 2? The difference between the 2 is the universal will is that Allah gives permissions for everything to take place, even if He hates that thing. But it's His dominion, it's His kingdom, He created everyone, and everyone's a slave of Him. Sha'u am abaw. It's impossible for a slave of Allah, even if it's disobedient, even if it's a kafir, to do something in His kingdom and dominion that Allah Azza wa Jal did not give permission for. Impossible. But Him giving a permission for this evil thing, for example, killing, to take place, or that the person permits shirk, Allah willed it, yes, Mashi'ah, otherwise it would never take place, and it comes under the universal will of Allah. But Allah Azza wa Jal, He hates shirk. وَلَا يَرْضَى لِعِبَادِهِ الْكُفْرِ, and Allah is not pleased for His servants' disbelief. So Allah hates it, but even if He hates it, from His universal will, He allows it for a hikmah and a wisdom that Allah Azza wa Jal knows. Because Allah doesn't force anyone to do any actions. The ibad, they still have free will to perform the actions that they perform. So if he wants to do shirk, he will be taken into account on that, and that comes under the will of Allah that is universal. The other will of Allah Azza wa Jal, al-Shar'i, is the will of Allah al-Shar'i, the legislative one, is those things Allah Azza wa Jal permits and gives permission for, and He loves and He's pleased with. Like being good to your parents, giving charity to our brothers in Palestine and making dua for them. That this comes under the will of Allah that He loves and He is pleased with. Is that clear? And that solves an issue that many people have when they say, if Allah existed, how come evil exists? How come this happens? How come children die? How come kada? How come kada? So Allah, if there was a God, how could this evil thing take place? That's what they say, sah. And that's what they teach in schools and the curriculum. Ma fahimu, that there's a difference between the will of Allah, something that He loves, and something that is universal, that He hates. Ma fahimu, that this life at the end of the day is a trial and a test. And if Allah was going to force everyone to do good, what was the point of the dunya and Jannah and Nar? Sah wallah. If everyone was crisp, khalas, we have a paradise in the dunya, we don't need Jannah, we don't need Nar to punish anyone. Sah wallah. But Allah Azza wa Jal, for a hikmah, permitted it. And sometimes they will say, look, we can't see no wisdom in children being bombed, children being killed. Sah. Wala la? Tayyib. Allah Azza wa Jal permitted and His universal will for a hikmah He knows. We might know, we might not know. But from the wisdoms is that Allah Azza wa Jal wants to enter them into Jannah. If the children of the Muslims die and are killed, they don't enter into Jannah. And if a father and a parent loses 2 children, he raises 2 daughters and they die, or 3 in a narration, then they will be for him a protection from the hellfire. And in another hadith, whoever loses a child and they're patient upon that, then they will precede them in Jannah. And they will not enter into Jannah, they say, we are waiting for our parents to come in with us. So look at the wisdoms behind it, that a person enters into Jannah after losing their child and being patient upon that. The person that just sees everything evil, he doesn't see those hikam. That Allah Azza wa Jal rewards the people in accordance to how they react to those calamities. Wallahi, our brothers and sisters, what they're going through in Palestine today, from hospitals being bombed, children being killed, their women, their elderly, innocent people. Wallahi, they're better than us. Wallahu a'lam. They're facing that and their iman is firm. Their loved ones die and they say, why are you sad? Mawtana fil Jannah, our dead will be in Jannah and they're dead in the hellfire. Look, they are living there and they see some of the hikam and they are patient and they're waiting for the wa'd of Allah, the promise of Allah Azza wa Jal, because it's true. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to ease their pains and to have mercy on their dead and to cure their sick and to remove the oppression of the oppressors from them. Ala kulli hal, the maqsood is sometimes we see something as evil and we don't see any other avenue of how it can be good, but there are other avenues and there's many hadith in that regard, and I don't want to prolong on this one point. The fourth point is al-khalq, that Allah Azza wa Jal created it. So after Allah Azza wa Jal had knowledge of it and commanded it to be written down and gave it permission, then Allah Azza wa Jal created it. He created it. Even if you see it as evil, and maybe it actually is evil, like shirk, but it came under the universal will of Allah. Did Allah create it or someone else create it? Allah still created it and made the action. When that person chose and done it and He gave him the permission, Allah Azza wa Jal created it. And the evidence for that is as He mentions here, وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَكُمْ وَمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Allah created you and created that which you do from actions. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, إِنَّا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَاهُ بِقَدَرٍ. Indeed, everything we created it with qadar, with pre-decree. And some misguided people, the Qadariyah of the Qudama, they would say that no, Allah didn't create our evil actions, we created it ourselves. So it's as if they made two gods. They made Allah for the good actions and they made themselves gods for their bad actions. And that's why some of the Salaf used to call those Qadariyah Majusu hadihi al-ummah. They are the fire worshippers of this nation. Why? Because the fire worshippers would say, look, we have a God of light, the sun, goodness, and when it's dark, we have another God of darkness and evil. So they would make two gods, and these Qadariyah became similar to them by claiming that Allah creates only their good deeds and they create their own bad deeds. And learning the Qadr and studying about the Qadr, it has a great ta'feer and effect in the life of a Muslim. When he knows that مَا أَصَابَهُ مِنْ شَيْءٍ, nothing afflicted him except that Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed it. That nothing has missed him, nothing went past him and never came to him, except that it was never going to come to him. And nothing that has afflicted him and occurred to him was never going to miss him. When you believe in that, a car that hit you and you became injured because of it, if you believe in the Qadr, you study the Qadr, you know that there was no way it was going to miss you. It was written and it was going to happen to you and it happened. Now how are you going to react to it? It makes you tranquil. You don't worry and stress about what happened and how did it happen and how could I avoid it. It happened. قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. And likewise the opposite. Something missed you, never came to you, whether you wanted it or you didn't want it, Allah protected you from it. It was never written for you to have it. So let's say a person wanted to get married or the likes, and قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ, they couldn't get married to the person they wanted to get married to. They're this close, but it never happened. So he's wondering, if only it happened, if only I did this right, if only. It was never written. It was never written. It was never going to happen. So you become tranquil. Like, khalas, Allah never wrote it for me. Maybe it's better for me that it never happened. And that benefit comes from when you learn the qadar. And there's many more benefits. The time doesn't allow. Billahi tawfiq. Continue. Next one.
ولم يكونوا يكفرون أحد من أهل القبلة بالذنب بقوله إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء.
Ahsant. The fourth topic he mentions out of the 9 is وَلَمْ يَكُونُوا يُكَفِّرُونَ أَحَدًا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْقِبْلَةِ بِالذَّنْبِ. They never used to, he's talking about those scholars that he met, those 1,000 people that he met in the different lands over 46 years, none of them used to declare a person to be a kafir from the people of the Qibla, from the Muslims, because of a sin that they committed. None of them would declare a person to be a kafir from the Muslims because of a sin that he committed. And this is a refutation against the Khawarij. So every asl that we have, now we've on the fourth point, every asl that we mentioned, there's a group, a big group that claim to be Muslims that went against it. And so the ones that went against this they're called the Khawarij. They see someone drinking alcohol, alcohol's haram, and is a major sin, but it doesn't take you out of the fold of Islam. You're still Muslim, but you're a sinner. They say no. The Khawarij, they say no, you drank alcohol, you're a kafir. You're not Muslim. We can't pray behind you. And even worse, they will say your blood is halal for me, your wealth is halal for me, I'm going to kill you right now. You drank alcohol. That's the Khawarij. Okay? And the Khawarij, the Prophet ﷺ, he warned against them. There's no other group the Prophet ﷺ warned against as much as he warned against the Khawarij. The Prophet ﷺ said, if I was to meet them, I would kill them, the killing of Ad and Thamud. Prophet ﷺ, he said that they will recite the Quran and it will not go past their collarbone. They will recite Quran plentifully, but will not go down to their hearts. They will not ponder upon it and act upon it. He mentioned that he mentioned many things, and the time doesn't allow. Ala kulli hal, warning against the Khawarij. And so we continue to warn against, and the Prophet ﷺ said in one hadith that they will continue to pop up. Every time a qarn, a horn of them comes out, quti'. Every time they bring a horn out and they come and they bring fasad, corruption, they will be cut off. Then they will disappear for a while. Then they will come again. Then they will be cut off. Then they will come again. They will be cut off. Up until they come at the end with the Dajjal. And that's a reality. The Prophet ﷺ said this. They will come up at the end with the Dajjal. And so if that is the case, and we know for sure the Khawarij, from time to time they're going to keep coming up, it's very important that we learn this right now. Where did the Khawarij, from what doubt did they enter into? They came from this doubt. One of their doubts is that a person, if he did a major sin, he's a kafir. We don't say that. Any Muslim, here it says Ahl al-Qibla. Ahl al-Qibla means the people that face the Qibla. It's taken from the hadith, Man istaqbala qiblatana, meaning they're Muslims. Then we don't declare them to be a Muslim, kafir, because of a sin that they did. Of course, as long as the sin itself is not shirk, and as long as the person doesn't hold the sin now to be halal for him. So if a person did a clear-cut shirk, slaughtered to other than Allah, that's a sin, right? But it's shirk, and that does take a person out of the fold of Islam. Or a person says, the alcohol that I'm drinking, he says, it's halal for me. It was haram, yeah, for 1,400 years, but now, 2023, after work, man, we gotta go to the pub, man. Gotta make the connections. Alcohol is halal. He holds it to be permissible. He made the haram to halal. That is called istihlal. And if a person holds it in their heart to be halal, he's a kafir. Even if he never drinks alcohol in his life, but he holds, drinking of halal now is okay, man. Back in the day, it was haram. Now it's halal. That's kufr. That sin is kufr.
Is that the same with music?
Any sin that is ma'loom, that is known by necessity to be a sin, is haram. Like drinking alcohol, like zina, like gamble, huh?
Being, I also call again the right term, being gay.
Yeah, like that even.
Yeah.
Even that.
Smoking?
Smoking. If a person holds it to be halal, if it's because of a doubt, he doesn't know why and kada, that's different. But these things, especially the clear-cut ones, gambling, someone says hijab for women, you don't have to wear it anymore. It's halal for women not to go outside without hijab. Right? He made something halal that is haram. A woman's not allowed to go outside with hijab, without hijab. And you with me? The clear-cut things. As for those that are not as clear-cut, then the person is taught and they're told. If they continue after that, then perhaps it's istihlal as well. Is that clear? So this fourth point is we don't declare any Muslims to be kuffar because of sins. And that's why we have the ISIS that existed. Someone will say, I'm Muslim, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. They say, no, you're a kafir. Why? I said, La ilaha illallah. No. You didn't listen to our Amir. You didn't join our state. You didn't do this. You gave tax money to khalas. You're kafir and your son's kafir and the food you kafir, your dog is kafir as well. The dog they will probably always hold it to be kafir. Maybe the cat they'll say is kafir too. Allah understand. That's the Khawarij, so we stay away from them, and this is where they came from. Number 5, Akhi, tafadhal. Sorry, before that. At the same time, last point, even though we don't hold a person to be kafir because of a sin, at the same time, la nuhawwin, we don't make the affairs of sins light. We don't say, yes, fine, you can drink alcohol, it's fine. No. We don't hold the person to be a kafir, but it's still a major sin, and the person that falls into it is a major sinner, and there's punishment for it. So Ahl Sunnah are in between the Khawarij that declare them to be kuffar and the Murji'ah that say, no. Your Iman is like Jibreel, drink, do everything, don't pray, brother, Iman, top. Is that clear? Ahl Sunnah are in the wasat, in the middle between Khawarij and the Murji'ah. فَلَا نُهَوِّن, we don't make light of the affair of sins. Continue.
أحسن الله إليك. قال رحمه الله: وما رأيت فيهم أحدا يتناول أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. قالت عائشة رضي الله عنها: أمروا أن يستغفروا لهم، وذلك قوله: ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم.
أحسنت. طيب, so here he says, Imam Bukhari says, وَمَا رَأَيْتُ فِيهِمْ أَحَدًا, I never saw from amongst them one person. From amongst who? Those 1,000 scholars that I met over 46 years. I never met one from amongst them speaking ill of the companions of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. None of them insulted or spoke ill or belittled the companions. More than 1,000 scholars. قالت Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, said, أُمِرُوا أَن يَسْتَغْفِرُوا لَهُم. They were commanded to seek forgiveness for them. We were commanded to seek forgiveness for the Sahaba, not to insult them. And that is in a statement in Surah Al-Hashr. After Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the virtue of the Muhajirin, then He mentions the virtue of the Ansar. And in the next page, the first verse on the right, Surah Al-Hashr, He mentions رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ al-ayah. Oh Allah, forgive us and our brothers that preceded us in Iman, meaning the Sahaba who came before us. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. And do not place in our hearts any enmity, any hatred for those, the people that have believed. رَبَّنَا إِنَّكَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. Okay, so here we have all of those 1,000 scholars and more in 46 years would hold the Sahaba to be in a high station and would not speak ill of them. Not the Sahaba as a whole, jumlatan, wala afradan, nor would they speak ill about one or two of the Sahaba. They would say, oh, all the Sahaba are good, but that one, they never used to say that. All of the Sahaba are udul, trustworthy. And all of them will stay away from speaking ill or belittling them. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا تسبوا أصحابي, do not speak ill of my companions. And it's mentioned in another narration. The reason why he mentioned this is because Abdurrahman bin Auf, he was a Muslim from the Muhajirin, from those that migrated, from the early Muslims. He migrated from Mecca to Medina, left everything behind. And Khalid bin Walid, who became a Muslim in the 8th year, just before Fath Mecca. So there's a big time difference between them. Khalid bin Walid just said, yeah, you only became Muslim a couple of days before me, Abdurrahman. And it's not a big deal, you're just a couple of days before me. Prophet ﷺ heard, got angry. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا تسبوا أصحابي, do not speak ill of my companions. If that's considered belittling all his effort, the muhajir, kada, from a companion to another companion, how about the things that you hear today from the Shia? And this is a refutation against the extreme Shia and the Shia that speak ill of the Sahaba, specifically the Rafidah, who declare majority of the Sahaba to be kuffar, who seek Allah's refuge. They declare the best of the people after all of the Prophets and Anbiya. The Rafidah declare majority of them to be kuffar except for a handful. Or some of the others that will speak ill of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, who's a Sahabi. Or who will speak ill of Amr bin As or Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Or those people that engage. The Prophet even said, don't engage in anything that took place between them. If something, let's say some fighting happened between the Sahaba, like Ali and Muawiyah, and they both were seeking the truth, and shaitan got between them and something happened, we don't indulge in the details and get involved and say, that one was right, this one's wrong, this one's kada, this one's... La. Umar bin Abdulaziz said, that is a fitna. Umar bin Abdulaziz was early. He said, this is a fitna, or that is a fitna Allah protected our swords from being involved in. So let's protect our tongues from being involved in. And so this is a refutation against the Rafidah and anyone else that speaks against them, even till today, like some of the Ikhwan that spoke ill of some of the Sahaba like Muawiyah and Uthman, and some of the names that you hear still not as much as before, but the people used to listen to them a lot, Sayyid Qutb, or read their books, and Mawdudi and the likes of these people who said very harsh statements against the Sahaba. Like Uthman bin Affan, his Khilafah, it's just the gap, don't consider it wasn't a real Khilafah. Abu Bakr, Umar, yes. Uthman, he was an old man, he didn't know what he was doing, kada. It's a gap in the history of Islam. So we just say Abu Bakr, Umar, then Ali. That's speaking ill of Uthman radiallahu anh, who was the son-in-law of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who's the third best Sahabi after Abu Bakr and Umar. And Abu Musa al-Ash'ari and Muawiyah, and they speak ill of them, let alone the Rafidah today, till today, who curse them and seek nearness to Allah by cursing them. I was walking around the Kaaba, and as many years ago, 2015 or 14, and I saw a card, and I saw Arabic words. So I didn't read it, I never had time, I was doing tawaf, I never had ihram either, it was just a voluntary tawaf. So I put it in my pocket in my thawb, because voluntary tawaf you don't have to wear the ihram. So I put it in my pocket and I said I'll put it somewhere safe later, so people don't stamp over it. So when I got somewhere into the masjid later, I sat down and read it, I was shocked. It says, La'an Allah, may the curse of Allah be upon Abu Bakr and Umar. May the curse of Allah be upon his two daughters. Pray 2 rak'ahs, brothers, before you sit down. May the curse of Allah be upon his two daughters, Hafsa and Umar, Hafsa and Aisha. May the curse of Allah be upon the whole family of Muawiyah and Marwan. This is, how are you saying this in the Kaaba in front of, this is what the Rafidah are. Ask Allah Azza wa Jal to protect us from that. طيب, next one.
وكانوا ينهون عن البدع ما لم يكن عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم واصحابه لقوله واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا ولقوله وإن تطيعوه تهتدوا.
Ahsant. So now point number 6. وكانوا, all of those 1,000 scholars that I met over a period of 46 years in all those different lands, in Egypt, Syria, Greater Syria, Iraq, and Mecca and Medina, all of them كانوا ينهون عن البدع. All of them used to warn against innovations. All of them used to warn us against innovations. More than 1,000 of them. What is innovations? ما لم يكن عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه. That which the Prophet ﷺ was not upon, nor were his companions upon. Something that was brought about that the Prophet ﷺ never acted upon, never conformed to, and his companions likewise never conformed to. Just like Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And hold on to the rope of Allah Azza wa Jal, all of you, and do not separate and do not differ. Here, the habl of Allah Azza wa Jal, the rope of Allah, has been described with many descriptions. Some say it's the straight path, some say it's all of Islam, some say it's the Quran, and all of it is one. All of it is guidance that Allah Azza wa Jal revealed down, and sticking to it without any innovations, without taking away from it, is guidance, and that's what Allah Azza wa Jal commanded us to stick to. And the Prophet and Allah Azza wa Jal also says, وَإِن تُطِيعُوهُ تَهْتَدُوا. And if you obey him, if you obey the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you will be guided. If you obey him and only him, and you don't bring other things that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never had. وهذا رد على جميع من ينهج البدع ويخالف طريقة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه. This is a refutation against everyone that is upon innovation, that either brings it or acts upon it, that is on a position to the way of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, and he warned many times against innovation. The Prophet ﷺ, every Friday in the khutbah, he would warn against innovations. In the khutbah al-hajjah, is part of the khutbah al-hajjah. وخير الكلام فإن أصدق الحديث كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها. And the most evil of affairs is the newly invented matters. وكل محدثة بدعة. And every newly invented matter is an innovation. And every innovation is in the fire or is misguidance. طيب. And likewise the Prophet ﷺ, he would counsel his Sahaba and he would warn them from innovation. as is in the hadith of Irbad ibn Sariya and other than them. And you can go back to the details inshallah, it's in Arba'in Nawawi, you can find it there, and the likes. طيب. Why was the Prophet ﷺ every Friday warning us innovation, and no innovation existed in his time? Why? Because how dangerous it is. The person who's upon innovation, he thinks he's getting closer to Allah with this act of innovation. And so that Khariji that we talked about, the ISIS guy, who declares a person to be a kafir because of a sin that he fell into. When he's doing that and declaring you to be a kafir, this innovation that he's upon, does he think he's going to hellfire for it? He thinks he's going to Jannah. That's what innovation is. Innovation is something that is not upon Islam. The Prophet ﷺ never came with it. The companions never came with it. It's something new, misguidance. But the person doing it thinks he is going to get Jannah by way of it. So innovation is more dangerous than normal sins. Because a sin, if you drink alcohol, the person knows alcohol is haram. And one day he wants to leave it. But with innovation, he doesn't want to ever leave it because he doesn't know its misguidance. That's why the Prophet ﷺ used to repeat this every Friday. Nushan lil ummah, as a sincere advice to the ummah. And likewise, the ummah continues to need scholars and ulama that clarify the innovation, the different types of innovation. So as advice to this ummah, so people stay away from it. The next point.
ويحثون على ما كان عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم واتباعه بقوله وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ولا تتبعوا السبل فتفرق بكم عن سبيله ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تتقون.
Number 7, the ulama, those 1,000 scholars over 46 years that he traveled, كانوا يحثون على ما كان عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم واتباعه. That all of those scholars would encourage and advise the students to follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was upon, and his companions. Because the path of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the only path that's going to take you to Jannah. The path of the Sahaba is the path of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba, the people that understood the most the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so we always go back to them as a reference point. And this shows you that the sunnah, Allah Azza wa Jal here, He says, وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِ مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ. This is my straight path, follow it. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلِ. And do not follow the other paths that lead you this way or that way. فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِ. So that you become misguided from the straight path of Allah. Just like we mentioned in today's khutbah, Ibn Mas'ud, he said, خَطَّ لَنَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ خَطًّا. He drew for us a straight line. And then he drew to the left and to the right other lines. And he said, this is the path of Allah. And these paths, at the head of each path, there's a shaitan calling to these divergent paths. And so this, the Prophet Allah Azza wa Jal, he says, do not follow these other paths so you become deviated. And follow the path of Allah, the one path. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. And also hold up to that straight path. Hold on to the straight path. All of you together and do not separate. What does that show us? That shows you that the sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ, the way of the Sahaba unites. It unites the Muslims. And it shows you that the opposite, that innovation, it separates. It brings disunity. It brings furqa. As Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلِ. Do not follow those other paths. فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِ. So it misguides you from the straight path of Allah. That shows you the sunnah guide unites. And that's why the Sahaba, Radwanullahi alayhim, the most guided group, after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Allah Azza wa Jal fataha alayhim. They were united, their hearts were united. The enemies could not overcome them. And even in battlefield, they would reach far places with much ease, with no technology, no modern technology that we have today. Why? Because they were united upon the truth, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That's the only thing that's going to unite us. And when innovations came, that's the reason why the ummah came weaker and weaker every year. Because more and more innovations came, and innovations do what? They split, like Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says here, فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِ. It will turn you away and deviate you away from the path of Allah. And you become weak. up until we become the hal we are today. Our brothers and sisters in Palestine are being killed left, right, center, and we can't do nothing. Why, we ask? Because of how much innovation and sins that surrounds us, that's weakened us. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith, how will you be on the day? How will you be on the day when the the nations will call one another, they will invite one another to ta'al, this other country, you come. Kuffar, they will tell each other, come, you come. They call each other and they will take from you, just like you invite a guest to your house and you have one dish and you eat from that one dish. They will take from you just like that. So 1 minute. The Sahaba then they said, on that day, O Messenger of Allah, will we be many or little? They said, how is this going to happen to us? Look how we are now. Are we little on that day? The Prophet said, La, you will be many on that day. But that number, you will be like ghutha. You will be like scum. You see the white scum that comes at the top of the water? That's fluffy, that doesn't hold any weight, no strength. That's how you will be on that day. And we fear that we are like that today. Why? Because of wahan, because of the love of the dunya and innovations and bu'd from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So what's the way to najah and falah? Is to go back to the sunnah that united the Sahaba. Billahi tawfiq. We do the adhan. Don't stop it. Just do the adhan. Then we'll finish the last point. 1 minute left. Okay, let's finish. Bismillah. خلي القراءة. Leave the reading because it's no time. The last point. Also, it's 2 more points. But who's the mu'adhin?
بعد المغرب.
ها؟
صلي المغرب
نكمل مرة واحدة. ما باقي شيء. There's nothing left. There's just 2 more points. The 8th point is وألا ننازع الأمر أهله لقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم 3 لا يغل عليهم قلب امرئ مسلم إخلاص العمل لله وطاعة ولاة الأمور ولزوم الجماعة فإن دعوتهم تحيط من وراءهم ثم أكد في قوله تعالى أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. This 8th point is talking about that the rulers, the Muslim rulers, that Allah Azza wa Jal has given them kingdom or rulership in whatever state that they are, that Allah Azza wa Jal أوجب طاعتهم. Allah has commanded us to obey them in goodness. And obeying the ruler is obeying the messenger, and obeying the messenger is obeying Allah. Just like in the hadith, Man ata'a, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Man ata'a amiri faqad ata'ani wa man ata'ani faqad ata'a Allah. Whoever obeys my amir, yani governor or ruler, then he has obeyed me, and whoever obeys me, then they have obeyed Allah. And this is from the usul that the ulama, or those 1,000 ulama over 46 years mentioned. But this is bil ma'roof, with goodness. Whether he's righteous or sinful, if he tells you to do something that is halal or permissible, you have to obey them in that. Traffic rules, or this or that, you have to obey in a Muslim country, Muslim ruler. But if they command you to do something that is haram, then لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. You're not allowed to obey any creation, ruler or not ruler, when it comes to the disobedience of Allah. So if they tell you, for argument's sake, drink alcohol or do zina, you do not obey them in that because it's haram. That would be disobedience to Allah. لا طاعة لمخلوق. We do not obey any creation if it entails disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, even though we never listen to him in that sin, لا ننازع الأمر أهله. We do not take our hands away from allegiance. We don't say, khalas, you're not my ruler anymore, and I'm going to rebel against you, and we're going to get another ruler, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. لا. لا ننازع الأمر أهله. But he's still your ruler, and you listen to me in anything else that is good. And he mentions the hadith, then he mentions the statement of Allah, obey Allah and obey his messenger and obey the rulers or the people that are being placed in charge over you. Then he mentions point number 9, the 9th topic, the last out of the 9. He says, وَأَلَّا يَرَى السَّيْفَ عَلَى أُمَّةِ مُحَمَّدٍ صلى الله عليه وسلم وقال الفضيل لو كانت لي دعوة مستجابة لم أجعلها إلا في إمام لأنه إذا صلح الإمام أمن البلاد والعباد. قال ابن المبارك يا معلم الخير من يجترئ على هذا غيرك. Point number 9 that he mentions in the affairs of Aqeedah, that those 1,000 scholars that he met over 46 years of traveling, Imam al-Bukhari, and over a number of different countries and continents, he says the 9th point is وَأَلَّا يَرَى السَّيْفَ عَلَى أُمَّةِ مُحَمَّدٍ. that they do not see, those scholars did not see that you raise a sword against the ummah of Muhammad, the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So you do not raise the sword in rebellion to take over the ruler and cause more corruption in the land than that was before. Rather, what we do, what the Salaf used to do, as Imam Bukhari here mentions from Fudayl ibn Iyad, is that you make dua that Allah Azza wa Jal guides them, that Allah Azza wa Jal rectifies their affair. Fudayl ibn Iyad, he said, لو كانت لي دعوة مستجابة. If I had one dua that Allah Azza wa Jal is going to accept, then I would have made dua for the ruler, for the imam. Meaning that Allah guides him and rectifies his affair and guides him to that which is good for all of the believers. Why? If this dua is accepted, why? لأنه إذا صلح. Because if that dua is accepted and the ruler becomes righteous, then the land and the slaves will they will have safety and peace. And the benefit, تحيط من وراءه. The benefit will encompass everyone. Is that clear? And so today we have many people, they just can't fathom this small point here. Imam Bukhari, who everyone knows, he says, I met 1,000 scholars over this span of 46 years of traveling in different continents and different countries. All of them agree in these 9 points. This last 9 point is that you do not bring up your sword against the Muslim ruler, whether he is righteous or sinful, as long as he is Muslim. Because why? The harms outweigh the benefit. And this is according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, that you listen and obey to the ruler even if he beats your back and takes your wealth. Why? Is beating you and taking your wealth not haram? Yes, it's haram, and Allah will judge him for that. It's not evil? Yes, it's evil. But the moment we do a rebellion and the sword is taken out and Muslim bloods are spilt, it will bring more chaos than good. And this is what we see all over the world. In Libya, khalas, they got rid of Gaddafi, even though he was kafir. But was the maslahah to take him down? Look what happened when he got taken down. Libya, ila yawmina hada, there's two governments, as our brothers mention all the time. In Syria, Bashar, kafir. All ulama agrees kafir. But they don't have the power to take him down. There's more harm in starting rebellion. What happened? What happened you saw. All over the world, every time Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, they said, there's not been a time rebellion happens against a ruler. That's a kafir ruler. What about a Muslim ruler? Except that the outcome was always worse than what they initially said. All the people that were encouraging all the people to do it, how many lives were lost? The Muslim blood, the life of a Muslim, is more sacred than the Kaaba. And so that benefit is more than the harm of 10 people or 100 people being harmed and oppression being made upon them, even though it's oppression, and Allah will judge them for that. Then he says, and that's the end of the Risala. In another narration of this same Risala of the Aqeedah of Imam Bukhari, in one narration he says, على هذا حييت وعليه أموت وعليه أبعث إن شاء الله. Upon this creed I will live, and I've lived, because this was 1 month before he passed away when he read this. وعليه أموت, and upon it I will die. وعليه أبعث إن شاء الله تعالى, and upon this I will be resurrected by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so from when he was 16 years old, from when he was a child, and he learned the correct Aqeedah, up until he was 62 at the end of his life, he was upon this creed. He never changed. He never changed with the winds and with the fashion, today's fashion, to believe LGBT is okay, so everyone says, khalas, Mishi Hal is okay, you can have your right. Tomorrow it comes kada, he changes the Aqeedah. على هذا نكتفي. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.